Yo, nah, this one right here? This not just another headline you scroll past. Because when I first saw this, I thought it was just noise. You know how the fight game is. Rumors, fake leaks, people chasing clout. But then I started looking a little closer and I'm like, hold on. Why are certain details not being talked about? You got Dana White making a move that's got people saying suspension, but nobody's really explaining what actually triggered it. Not clearly. Not directly. And that's where it gets interesting. Because at the same time all that's going on, Arman Tsarukyan's next fight starts leaking out. Not announced. Not official. Just appearing in conversations like it was meant to slip out. And you gotta ask yourself, why now? Why does the drop right when another situation is heating up? And then there's Khamzat. Yeah, that part right there. People brushing past it way too quick. Because behind the scenes, there's talk, real talk, that something bigger is shifting in how certain fighters are being positioned. Not just fights, but narratives. Who gets pushed, who gets paused, who gets attention at the exact right moment. And I'm not saying everything is connected, but the timing? Nah, that's not random. You ever notice how in this sport, the biggest moves don't always happen in the cage? Sometimes it's what's happening around it, quietly, strategically. And right now, it feels like something's being rearranged. Like pieces moving on a board most people don't even realize they're looking at. So the real question is this actually about cheating? Or is that just the part they're letting you see? Because what I'm hearing, yeah, it might be deeper than that. So this is what people are seeing on the surface right now. And it looks simple at first, but it really isn't. You got Dana White, head of the UFC, making a move that's being labeled as a suspension tied to cheating. That word alone is enough to light everything up. Fans hear cheating and immediately jump to conclusions. PDs, fight manipulation, something shady behind the scenes. But here's the thing. Nobody dropped a clean, detailed explanation. It's just that word floating around. And that's already shaping the narrative before the facts even settle. And when something like that happens in the fight world, the reaction is instant. Clips start circulating, old interviews get pulled back up, people start revisiting past performances like there's suddenly evidence of something bigger. It's like the entire timeline rewinds overnight, and everybody's looking for the moment that proves something was off. At the same time, Arman Tsarukyan's name starts trending, but not for drama. It's about his next fight. And what's strange is how that information is coming out. Not a clean UFC announcement, not a polished promo, just whispers turning into headlines. Leaked expected, likely opponent, all these half-confirmed phrases that feel intentional without actually being official. And you gotta pause there for a second, because timing in this sport, it matters more than people think. One story heating up while another one quietly builds in the background? That's not new. But the way this is happening feels different. It's almost like attention is being split on purpose. While everyone's locked into the suspension talk, another storyline is being planted right next to it. You see what I'm saying? And then there's Khamzat Chimaev, and his name doesn't come in loud. It's more subtle, mentioned in passing, tied into possibilities, future matchups, or shifts in the division. But if you've been watching closely, you know his position in the UFC is never random. When his name shows up around other major developments, it usually means something is moving behind the curtain. Early reactions from fans are all over the place right now. Some are angry, saying the sport needs to stay clean and that any kind of cheating should be dealt with hard and fast. Others are skeptical, saying we've seen situations before where words get thrown around before the full truth comes out. And then there's that third group, the ones paying attention to patterns. Not just what's happening, but how it's happening. They're the ones asking why details are missing, why certain updates feel rushed, and why everything seems to be unfolding at the exact same time. Because let's be real, if this was a straightforward situation, we'd already have clarity. We'd have specifics. We'd have confirmation. But instead, we've got layers. A suspension without full explanation. A fight being talked about before it's officially locked in. And a top contender's name floating around like he's somehow connected to what's coming next. And nobody's really tying it all together out loud. That's what makes it feel different. Because it's not loud chaos, it's controlled noise. Just enough information to keep people talking. Not enough to actually settle anything. And the UFC? They're not exactly stepping in to clean it up immediately. Which, if you've been watching long enough, tells you something in itself. They know how fast narratives move. They know how fans react. So when things are allowed to sit in that gray area for a minute, it usually means there's more developing behind the scenes. And right now, it feels like we're only seeing the early stage of something bigger. Like pieces are being put in place, but the full picture isn't ready to be shown yet. And the more you look at it, the more you realize this isn't just about one fighter or one moment. It's about how everything is unfolding at the same time. And that's the part people are just starting to notice. Now this is where it starts getting a little more intense. Because what looked like a simple situation at first is now pulling in way more attention than expected. The conversation online? Yeah, it's not calm anymore. You got fans going back and forth heavy. One side is convinced something serious went down, saying there's no way a suspension gets thrown around like that without something real behind it. They're pointing at the word, cheating, like it already tells the whole story. But then you got the other side pushing back, saying hold on, we've seen this before. Labels get used early, narratives get built fast, and sometimes the full explanation comes way later, or doesn't match what people assumed in the beginning. And that tension right there? It's growing. Because now every little update, real or rumored, is getting amplified. Somebody posts a clip from an old fight. Suddenly it's, look at this, something was off. Somebody shares a training video, now it's, nah, he looks normal, y'all reaching. It's like the entire fanbase turned into investigators overnight, trying to decode something that hasn't even been clearly explained yet. And right in the middle of all that noise, Arman Tsarukyan's situation starts picking up more traction. Those early leaks about his next fight? Yeah, they're not staying quiet anymore. Now bigger pages are talking about it, more insiders hinting at potential matchups, and it's starting to feel less like a rumor and more like something that's already in motion. But here's the thing, it's still not official, and that's what keeps it in that weird space. Because if it was locked in, why not just announce it clean? Why let it build like this through whispers and speculation? You see what I'm saying? It almost feels like the anticipation itself is part of the strategy. Like letting people talk, argue, and guess keeps the attention exactly where it needs to be. And while that's happening, Khamzat Chimaev's name keeps slipping into the conversation in subtle ways. Not front and center, but always there in the background. People bringing him up when they talk about future matchups, title pictures, potential shakeups in the division. And it's interesting, because every time his name comes up, the energy shifts a little. Like suddenly the conversation isn't just about what already happened, it's about what could happen next. And that's where things start connecting in a different way. Because now, you're not just looking at a suspension or a leaked fight. You're looking at how the division might be getting rearranged. Who moves up? Who gets held back? Who gets pushed into the spotlight at the exact right moment? And fans are starting to feel that shift, even if they can't fully explain it yet. You can see it in the comments, in the reactions, people saying stuff like, "This feels planned," or "The timing is too perfect." And again, nobody has proof of that. But the feeling? Yeah, it's there. And once that feeling spreads, it changes how everything is viewed. Now every announcement feels calculated. Every delay feels intentional. Every leak feels like it might not be a leak at all. And that's when things stop being simple. Because now it's not just about facts, it's about perception. And perception in this sport? It moves fast. Faster than official statements. Faster than confirmations. And sometimes, it shapes the story before the truth even catches up. And right now, you can feel that pressure building. Because the longer things stay unclear, the more room there is for speculation. And the more speculation grows, the harder it becomes to separate what's real from what just sounds convincing. And that's exactly where we are. Right in that middle space. Where nothing is fully confirmed. But everything feels like it means something bigger. And the wild part is, it doesn't feel like it's slowing down anytime soon. If anything, it feels like it's building towards something else. Something that hasn't dropped yet. But when it does, yeah, it's probably going to change how people look at all of this again. And now the whole thing starts feeling heavier, because the more people dig into it, the less everything lines up clean. Like at first it was just noise, right? A suspension label, a few rumors, some chatter about fights, but now people are actually comparing timelines, looking at who said what and when, and that's where things start clashing. You got one version of events floating around that makes it seem straightforward, like something was flagged, action was taken, end of story. But then you start noticing gaps, like moments where information should be clear, but it's not. And those gaps? They're getting bigger the more people look. You see what I'm saying? Because now fans aren't just reacting, they're questioning everything. Why was the word cheating used so quickly without a full breakdown? Why does it feel like details are being held back instead of clarified? And at the same time, why is Arman Tsarukyan's next move being talked about so confidently without anything official backing it up yet? Those two things happening together, that's what's throwing people off. Because normally, when something serious like a suspension happens, the focus stays there. But right now, it feels split. Like attention is being pulled in two directions on purpose. And that's where the speculation starts getting stronger. People are now suggesting that maybe this isn't just about one situation. Maybe it's about timing. Maybe it's about controlling the narrative, while other plans are already in motion. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but that's the conversation that's building right now. And once that idea gets out there, it changes how every new piece of information is received. Nothing feels neutral anymore. Everything feels like it could mean something. And then, you got those small contradictions that keep popping up. Little details that don't match earlier reports. Statements that feel slightly off when you compare them side by side. And on their own, they might not mean much. But together, they start creating doubt. And doubt spreads fast. Especially in a sport where people already question what's happening behind the scenes. And then, there's Khamzat Chimaev's presence in all of this, still not directly tied to anything specific, but always hovering around the conversation. And that alone is enough to raise eyebrows. Because his name doesn't just come up randomly. When people start linking him to future possibilities, while all this is unfolding, it makes it feel like there's a bigger shift happening in the division. Like pieces are being moved quietly, while everyone is distracted by the louder story. And that's where the emotional side starts kicking in. Fans getting frustrated. Some saying the sport needs more transparency. Others saying people are overthinking it and creating drama where there isn't any. But even those people, they're still watching. Because something about this doesn't feel fully explained. And that's the part nobody can ignore. You can argue about details, you can disagree on theories, but that feeling that something is missing? Yeah, that's consistent. And then you hit the biggest question of all. If this was as simple as it's being presented, why does it feel so complicated? Why are there so many moving pieces at the same time? Why does it feel like every answer leads to another question instead of closing things out? That's what's keeping people locked in right now. Not just what happened, but what's not being said. And until that gets addressed clearly, this whole situation stays in that uncomfortable space, where nothing is fully proven, but nothing feels fully explained either. And that's where things start getting real tense, because the longer it stays like this, the more people start expecting something bigger to come out. Something that either connects all the dots, or completely flips the way everyone's been looking at it. And right now, it honestly feels like we're right on the edge of that moment. And this is where everything takes that sharp turn, because now the conversation isn't just growing, it's shifting. Like you can actually feel it. People aren't just reacting anymore, they're rethinking everything they said earlier. Because new details, again, not fully confirmed, but coming from multiple directions, start painting a slightly different picture. And it doesn't completely rewrite what we've heard, but it changes how it's being interpreted. You see what I'm saying? Because now instead of looking at this like one isolated situation, people are starting to look at the sequence of events around it. Who spoke first? Who stayed quiet? What got pushed out fast? And what didn't get addressed at all? And that's where it gets uncomfortable. Because when you line those things up, it doesn't feel random. It feels managed. Like certain pieces were allowed to come out quickly, while others just stayed in the background. And the more that idea spreads, the more people start questioning the original narrative. Not rejecting it completely, but not accepting it at face value either. And then the focus shifts again to Arman Tsarukyan's situation. Because now those leaks don't feel accidental anymore. They feel timed. Like they showed up exactly when they needed to give people something else to talk about. And whether that's true or not, the perception alone is enough to change how fans are reacting. Because now it's not just excitement about a potential fight. It's suspicion about why it's being talked about the way it is. And then you bring Khamzat Chimaev back into the conversation. And this is where things really start to click differently for people. Because now his name isn't just floating around. It's being connected to possible outcomes, future matchups, title implications. And suddenly, the whole division starts to look like it's in motion. Not chaotic motion. Controlled motion. Like pieces being adjusted step by step. And that's when people start asking a different kind of question. Not, what happened? But, what's being set up next? And that shift in thinking? Yeah, that changes everything. Because now the original situation isn't just being looked at for what it is, it's being looked at for what it might lead to. And that opens the door to a whole new level of speculation. Some people are saying this is just how the business works. That timing announcements, controlling narratives, and guiding attention is part of the game. Others are saying, nah, this feels too calculated, too perfectly lined up to be coincidence. And again, no one has full proof either way. But the conversation has clearly moved beyond the surface. And you can feel the tension building in a different way now. It's not loud arguments anymore. It's quieter, more focused. Like people are watching closely, waiting for the next piece to drop. And at the same time, there's still that lack of full clarity. We've got more context than before, more angles, more things to consider, but still no complete explanation that ties everything together clean. And that's what keeps this whole situation in that gray zone. Because even with all these shifts, all these new perspectives, there's still something missing. Like one key detail that would either confirm everything people are suspecting, or shut it all down completely. And until that shows up, if it ever does, everything stays open. Every theory stays possible. Every question stays unanswered. And that's why this moment feels different from the usual fight news cycle. Because it's not just building toward a fight. It's building toward understanding what actually happened behind all of this. And whether what we've been seeing is the full story, or just the version we were meant to see. And right now, it honestly feels like we're closer than ever to that answer, but still not close enough to fully trust it. At the end of the day, this whole situation's still sitting in that gray area. We got pieces, we got reactions, we got names moving around at the same time, everything heating up. But a full, clear picture? Nah, we still don't have that. What we do know is this. Something happened that was serious enough to shift attention across the whole fight world. We know a suspension is being talked about. We know Arman Tsarukyan's next move is already creating noise before anything official drops. And we know Khamzat's name keeps showing up around all of this like he's part of something bigger coming. But what we don't know, that's the part that matters most. We don't know the full reason behind the decision. We don't know if these timelines lining up is coincidence or something more calculated. And we definitely don't know what's happening behind closed doors that hasn't been said yet. And that's why this story not done. Not even close. So now I'm throwing it to you. What do you think is really going on here? You think this just normal fight game chaos? Or you feel like there's something deeper people not putting together yet? Drop your take in the comments. I'm reading all of it. And don't just scroll past this one. Stay locked in. Because the next piece that drops? Yeah, it might change everything again, eyes.